Hey everyone, it's Terry, and I am back with another exciting segment of Just a Glimpse. This time around, we're going to be going over my thoughts and opinions for different RPGs. Now, for those of you who are not gaming savvy, those are role-playing games. I put up a poll on my Twitter, and you guys had chose this to be the next segment's topic. I'm going to go over games that I felt were overhyped and disappointing to me, as well as games that I feel are super underrated, and as well as cover some of my favorites within the RPG genre. I sat here over the last couple days compiling a list of games that I felt fit into each one of these categories, and so we're going to start off with games that are overhyped and disappointing to me. All right, this is my opinion only. I know there's going to be plenty of people out there that are going to have strong disagreements with me, and that's fine. You're welcome to love whatever you want to love and enjoy. This is just for me personally. Looking back at the list I was making, I found that most of the games that really impacted me as being disappointing all came from this current generation. Most of them did anyway. And I'm like, dang. So I was trying to think back of on really old generations too, to try to get some older games, and I really honestly couldn't think too much of things that really disappointed me. And I think it's mostly because a lot of the games I played as a kid, I didn't really have any expectations because I was a kid. You know, you saw like a cool title or whatever, you're like, oh cool, that's awesome, and you didn't really have too many expectations other than it looked cool, so you wanted to play it. Well, as an adult now, we look into things a lot more deeply, and we have things that we expect to see and what we want to see. So we'll just dive right in. I have a bunch of games here on my list for ones that I felt were overhyped. The 2018 God of War. Now, this was a PlayStation exclusive title. I was super hyped and excited for this game, as I am a fan of the series. I played the classic ones, and I just wasn't, so this was something that I was like, oh, sweet, we're going to get God of War back. That's pretty flipping cool. So I had a lot of hype for this. Sony did what they do, and they do some crazy marketing. And so everybody was getting super, super hyped for this game, as was I. And then it finally came out and I got to play it. And I had a lot of issues with this game. I did not like it. I will say that right now. I am not a fan of the 2018 God of War. Personally, I strongly dislike this game. It did not appeal to me at all. They completely changed pretty much everything that made me think of what God of War is. And this game may appeal to bringing in a lot of new fans who may not have played the classics. That's fine. And there are fans out there who love the classics as well as the new one. That's fine. But for me, this game was a huge disappointment. Huge disappointment. When it came to the gameplay, I did not like the combat system at all. It just wasn't my style. Usually when I play, let's say, like an RPG game, I usually am more of a ranged fighter. Or if I do melee, I like to dual wield. And I like to be quick and fast. Whereas in this version of God of War, you start off with, it's basically kind of like the sword and shield kind of combat mechanic. Those battle mechanics are not my style. I don't like playing that way. Okay, I don't want to have to get up close, sit there, block with a shield, take a few jabs or whatever, and it's very slow, and that's not the way I play. And I don't want to play that way. And the game didn't give me an option. They're like, this is how you have to play. You have to, basically have a warrior fighting style. And it just was very off-putting for me, because that's not how I play games. Just like I'm sure if you took somebody who only plays magic type characters and you told them, okay, well, now you're going to play a tank, a two-handed weapon tank, they're going to be kind of all over the place, because it's not what they play. So this was off-putting, because when you played the classic God of War games, you did some dual wielding, and it was very, very fast-paced, high action, and things like that. Whereas the 2018 everything seemed a lot slower, and it was more technical. And it just, they completely changed it from what I would have liked. Graphically, it was beautiful. I'm not going to say anything against them graphically. They did a beautiful job, you know, updating it from it being kind of cartoony to be more realistic. So they did a great job there. And the soundtrack was good. I don't have any complaints about the music. I felt like they did a good job making music that fit the atmosphere that they're going for the period of the game. So they did a great job there. There's just other things. So it was the gameplay mechanics weren't for me. I felt that the characters in the game also weren't appealing to me. So for those who may not have played it, you play as you have the main character, Kratos. He's the main guy that goes through all of the games. So you play as Kratos. And then they introduced his son into this one. And let me tell you, I was not a fan of his son. I think his name was Atreus or something like that. Forgive me, I might have his name wrong. But I really did not like that kid. That kid annoyed the crap out of me to the point that when I was playing games, and you can even ask some of my friends who watched me during my live stream, I got so annoyed listening to the kid that I actually went into the audio settings, and I muted the dialogue so I wouldn't have to listen to him. Because I got tired of listening to this kid whine. So I had to turn it off. And it was really hard for me to get immersed into the game. I felt that the storyline was taking us off on these weird tangents. The whole point of the story was Kratos and his son were supposed to climb the top of a mountain to, you know, do this burial thing with his late wife and, you know, his son's mom or whatever. And they just go on this long extended journey doing all this weird stuff, and it's like I feel like they went way out of their way when you start the game, you see where the mountain is and it's not that far. So it would be, to me, it felt like, let's say you're in your hometown, you're like, okay, you know, I'm going to run to the store and get some groceries and I'll be back, right? And maybe you have to fight with rush hour traffic, and that's going to be like your obstacle. They took that and they're like, okay, well, instead of you going to your local grocery store, you decided to drive 3 states over and have a whole bunch of shenaniganery happening along the way before you go to your local grocery store. It's like, what? It's just over the top for me, over the top. And everybody, I know there's going to be a lot of people being like, well, it was all about, you know, the connection with, you know, father and son and the journey they went on. I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But they took an extended journey. You know, that was unnecessary, in my opinion. I also had issues with the inventory crafting system in the game. It was just a flippin' mess. They'll have you go and you can like upgrade and do like the different pommels and different, you know, things to build your weapons and things, and most of them were worthless. You didn't need them, so you just were getting all this stuff that you never used. And then they had stuff where you could go out of your way, do special quests or whatever to go and get pieces to make some special weapons and armor that you need. And by the time you get all that done, you're such a high level that stuff is now worthless. So they had a terrible balancing when it came to the gear. And I did not like that at all. So that was another thing that just really got under my skin. And then they had, when it came to the puzzles I felt were kind of dumbed down. They weren't that good. God of War has always been known for having really hard puzzles, and they went and they really dumbed it down for the casual gamer, which, I mean, it's fine, I guess, because, you know, they want to get new people into the game, but it sucks when you're a long-term fan and you already have expectations that, you know, God of War has these really awesome, you know, challenging puzzles that make you sit there and think, and then they just, you know, really dumbed everything down, and everything just kind of felt the same. You know, you throw your axe at a few things to spin some stuff around, or you have to move a block over here so you can climb on something. It's like they didn't really it just felt like they dumbed it down so much that they just got lazy with the puzzles, in my opinion. They weren't any good for me. All right, because I'm somebody who loves puzzle games. Like I said, I played the classic God of Wars, and I love like Tomb Raider and stuff. And Tomb Raider always had really good puzzles and stuff in them too, and I love that stuff. So for a veteran puzzle action adventure gamer going in and playing something that I've grown up with and played all the time, to find out that they super, made it really easy and simplistic and toned down for the casual gamer. It was a disappointment for me because I didn't get what I was hoping to get. I couldn't get what I wanted out of it. Yes, plenty of new gamers would be able to play and enjoy it, but me, the long-term fan, got kind of screwed over, in my opinion. So that ruined it. I don't know, it just felt there wasn't enough variety in enemies. There were other issues where you could fight these winged elves characters in the game, and you could literally kick them off of a cliff and they would die. And I'm like, wait a minute, they have wings, why aren't they just flying back up? It's stuff like that where the game, it just felt like they missed out on very important things that you're going to notice. Like how is a winged creature falling and dying and not using their wings and flying? It may seem like a small thing to a lot of people, but I'm like, to me that's a pretty big flaw. I mean, why give them wings then if they're not going to be using them outside of when you might see some enemies hovering in the sky and they'll come down and fight you, but if that's all they're going to use them for and they're not going to use them when you pick them off a cliff, then you might as well not even have them have wings. And in my opinion, it just seems like a design flaw at that point. And when it came to the boss fights in the game, they were all pretty much the same. You had like maybe 3 types of boss fights in the game. And yeah, you may have multiple enemies, like there's like a bunch of different bosses you fight, but they're going to fall between A, B, or C for the style of how they're going to be done. So there wasn't really much variety. So once you kind of figured out the different patterns that they do, you can kind of, get through them with no problem. They didn't have enough variety in the types of enemies and bosses, as well as they didn't have enough boss fights. They fell short. And I feel that people really hype this game up. It really gets under my nerves when other gamers will say a game is a masterpiece, when I can list off lots of flaws. It's not a masterpiece, okay? A masterpiece means, to me, a masterpiece means that it is perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. That is as best as it can get. There can be no better. That's the standard everyone should be, setting off to be. You've met the peak, all right? And none of these games ever are a masterpiece. They always have flaws. They could always be better. So I just really hate it when people throw that term around, because it doesn't apply. The story could have been better, in my opinion. The characters could have been better. They just, like I said, I ended up muting the audio because I got tired of listening to the characters talk, because they were annoying and unappealing to me. And I have never, ever in my life, prior to this game, muted the dialogue audio in a game, because ever. This was the first time in my life, all right, and I'm in my 30s, the first time in my life that I was so annoyed by the characters that I had to mute them. So how are you going to go and try to convince me this game is a masterpiece when I've muted the darn audio in the game for the first time in my life because I couldn't stand it? So no, you will not convince me this game is a masterpiece, all right? So that's how I feel about the 2018 God of War. And there's a lot more I could go into it, but I do have a lot of other games I need to cover, so I'm not going to dive in deeper to all of the flaws that I see within the game. But that's how I felt about that one. Horizon Zero Dawn is another game that's on my list. Now, I will not say this game was disappointing, but I will definitely say it was overhyped, in my opinion. Horizon Zero Dawn was a game that was exclusive for PS4 for a good time, and then recently we switched over to being available on PC. Now, at the time when this game first came out, I would say that it was super hyped. A lot of people are hyping it up within the media and within the gamer communities. It was definitely a highly anticipated game. I thought it looked pretty cool and interesting, so I did have my eye on it, but I don't like to buy into hype, because I've been disappointed by so many things in my life when it comes to video games. So if I see a game that piques my interest, I'll keep tabs on it and I'll definitely give it a go. But I try not to get my expectations too high. And Horizon Zero Dawn was one that looked pretty cool and interesting, but I didn't know if it would really appeal to me or not. I couldn't really tell just by what they were showing for their announcements and things like that. But then when the game finally came out and I got to play it, I definitely felt it was overhyped. The game felt unpolished and not done. And I mean, keep in mind, when I played the game, I played it at launch. There's going to be lots of people who played it that maybe played it, maybe a few weeks or even months after it came out, and so you may not have noticed these issues because they would have been patched. But when I played it, the game had a lot of issues. They didn't have water physics. You could walk through the water and there was no sound. The water didn't have a response to you walking through it properly. So their water physics were broken. NPCs that you would interact with to get your quests and things, and they all looked the same. So it was one of those issues where they sacrificed on character design so that they could make the world look better. But then because of that, every random character you would run up to looked like the previous one. It looked like you were just talking to the same person over and over. They might just have a different hairstyle, or they all had the same face, but they might just have a different hairstyle, or they might have changed the skin tone a little bit to try to pull it off as somebody else, but you clearly tell that they were all the same person, the same character build model, and that irritates the crap out of me. It really pulls me out. I can't get immersed in a game like that. I need to feel like I'm finding new people, not the same person on repeat. So it makes it hard for me to get immersed. So I really dislike that. Graphically, it looked fine. Feel like it could have been better, and it's another one of those issues where a lot of the games that have been coming out for the current generation, when it comes to the console side, they were all not made to fully utilize the hardware. Basically, the One X and the PlayStation Pro were scams, in my opinion. Anyways, Horizon Zero Dawn. It also had, I really liked the gameplay. I thought that the exploration was really, really good. I really had a lot of fun just wandering around the world and seeing what there was to see, climbing up on tall structures and things like that. I thought that was really cool. The combat mechanics were really well done. I had fun with that as well. And they gave you a very wide variety of different weapons and tools that you could use within the world to tackle the obstacles differently, which was great. I absolutely loved that. So they did a wonderful job there. But then I felt when it came to the main story, I felt like that's where they lacked. The side quests were amazing. All right, I had a lot of fun playing through the side quests, but the main story quests for me was super boring. And they did a lot more with doing recordings, you sit there listening to these little audio logs and things for the main quests, which was boring, versus you doing side quests and you had that actual engagement with other people within the town that you're visiting or out in the wild or whatever, which was great. So it just was more, you could get immersed in that a lot better than you could with the main story. The main story, like I said, was just really, really boring to me. It was just listening basically to an autobiography. And I was like, I don't really care about any of that, and it's one of those flaws that RPGs have where they like to put a lot of their lore and story into their recordings, or they'll put them into notes that they'll leave scattered around for people to find, pieces of paper to read up on, or books or things like that. And yes, there are going to be those gamers that are going to sit there and be meticulous and read through every single thing and listen to everything because they really want to get into that lore. But for me, the only time I have time to play a game is when I'm streaming it, and I can't just sit there and read and read and read and read and read. People are going to get bored. I need to keep the game going and keep it engaging and interactive and fun. So I have to skip through a lot of that stuff. So I'm not going to get the story unless you give me a cutscene that gives me the damn story. I just really dislike how RPGs do that a lot, where they want you to read and find the story versus, them tell you the story. Whereas you can go play an action-adventure game, and it's and a lot of them will be you're watching a movie because they're telling you the story. But then you go and you play an RPG and you have to find the story and you need to read it yourself. And not everybody has the time or the patience to want to do that, you know? So I don't like that aspect. And because of the way I felt about the story, I felt that kind of hurt the game, because I had more fun doing nothing and just exploring and just, you know, killing and trapping random things in the world than playing the story. And I feel like you should have fun doing the exploring and the side stuff, but the story is supposed to be the big draw. Like, oh my gosh, yeah, the gameplay was fun, I had fun with the side quests and whatnot, and the world was pretty, but oh my god, that story just blew my mind. That's what you want. Instead, I was like, screw the story sucks, I'm not going to care about the story, I'm just going to sit here and do random nothing and just run around and shoot things, because the story isn't worth it to me. So that was a huge flop. And then I also disliked how the main character, Aloy, in the very beginning, they have this amazing thing where she is getting mentored and to learn survival skills, to learn how to track, to learn how to hunt and things like that, which was amazing. And then as soon as that experience ends in the very beginning, she ends up finding some technology that allows her to just do it through the technology. So it's basically like, okay, you can go out and get some wilderness training, right? Learn how to make a campfire in a shelter, you know, get some wilderness training. But now we're not going to use that because we have an app for that. So yeah, we're not going to do that. You're just going to boot up the app and the app is going to, you know, do everything for you. That's what happened. So I really hated that. I hated that so much. I felt like, what was the point of having this amazing beginning of showing how she's learning how to do these things, but now she doesn't have to rely on any of that because she can just click the tech that she's got on her eye and boom, it shows her where all the tracks are. So now she can track, you know, visually through the technology versus with the skills that she just learned and things like that. And that just irritated me. That really irritated me. And it had its benefits, because there's going to be certain times where she'll need to use it for like solving a puzzle or something, where the technology allows her to do things that she wasn't trained on. So it had a purpose, but I felt like they made it to where she used it for everything. And so it made everything in the beginning from her mentor just a waste of time and unimportant. You know, it was unnecessary. She's not using any of it. So it just took away from that. So I just like that. But overall, I would say the game was good. I had fun with it. I did enjoy playing it. But to me, it was definitely overhyped. It could have been way better than it was. Okay, so next I want to talk about Kingdom Hearts 3. Now, not only was this game crazy overhyped, it was super disappointing to me. Crazy disappointing. Now, I love Kingdom Hearts. Alright, I love Kingdom Hearts. And I was looking forward to this game. I was like, yes, I get to play, you know, a new Kingdom Hearts that, you know, is for this current generation, because all the other ones were like PlayStation 2 and whatnot. So I was like, great, now I can finally get something, you know, more modern, and we can really have a great experience, because Kingdom Hearts always had a fantastic story and gameplay and everything like that. It was fantastic. So I'm like, yeah, this is gonna be great. And then the game comes out and I start playing it, and it was... They ruined it. They ruined it. One of the biggest draws about Kingdom Hearts is it had Disney characters mixed with Final Fantasy characters. And then they have their own OCs that they created, you know, within the universe as well. And Kingdom Hearts 3, they're like, you know what? We're not going to do Final Fantasy at all. You know, we'll keep Disney in there, and that's it. And I'm sitting here like, no, like, that's part of what makes Kingdom Hearts what it is that it's more than just Disney, you know? It's bringing these different worlds together that would never come together. And so you're losing that aesthetic and all those amazing characters that have been in all of the other games. You just took them out. They're gone. So that super sucked. And then when it came to the gameplay, it was like they were holding your hand. It's like you couldn't do anything without everybody telling you, hey, you should look over here, or hey, you should do this. And I'm just like, let me play the game. Okay, I'm not a freaking toddler. I don't need you to hold my hand and tell me how to play this game. Let me play it. And so it's just super annoying. And then they also had the issue where it just felt like they were pushing story too heavily. I didn't have much gameplay. It was cutscene. And then I walked forward a little bit, and then another cutscene, and then, you know, and then another cutscene, and I didn't get a chance to play. It was constant cutscene, cutscene, cutscene. And I'm like, just put all in one freaking cutscene. Why are you giving me a cutscene, allowing me to take 3 steps forward and to give me another cutscene? Just get it out of the damn way so I can freaking play. You know? And it's just, I just really could not get into Kingdom Hearts 3. I just was so disappointed with it, and I never finished it because I just was like, screw it. I disliked it so much and was so upset with how the game was coming out that I didn't even bother playing it. I lost all interest in that game. It was one of the biggest disappointments I had that year was Kingdom Hearts 3. I'm still upset about that game, and I just, yeah, I'm never gonna go back and play it. Not ever. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't exist. Alright? Like, it's dead to me. Another game that I felt that disappointing to me would be Monster Hunter World. Now, I'm not going to say this game was overhyped because I feel like it brought enough hype for people who were fans of the series. For me, I never played a Monster Hunter game before. So Monster Hunter World was going to be my entry to the franchise. Alright, so I thought from what they were showing that it looked really cool. I'm like, okay, we get to go around, we get to hunt these really big, you know, dinosaur-like creature, like lizard dudes. And, you know, it's going to be like this big RPG experience, and it was going to be sweet, it was going to be cool. I'm like, okay, I'm down for that. But then I actually got to play it, and I didn't like it. The gameplay wasn't for me. The fighting mechanics definitely were not for me. For me, trying to be someone who was brand new and wanting to become a fan and get into it, they lost me. They couldn't rein me in. It just felt like a huge game of cat and mouse. You know, you go and you track down the thing, you fight a little bit, it runs away. You gotta go track it down again, you fight a little bit, it runs away. You know, and then you go and you fight it, and then you just get, like, you don't get much of a reward for doing it. So it just felt like you were just wasting your time. Like, okay, I'm gonna keep tracking and hunting this thing down, just super tedious, and then when I finally achieve the goal of taking down my prey, I'm not gonna get anything really that matters for doing it, because they want you to do it 100 plus more times to maybe get, you know, the gear you need. So the game was just super grindy, and I hate games that are super grindy, unless they can make the grind fun for me. Alright, so RPGs tend to be grindy, but they don't feel grindy when it's okay, you're just doing a lot of random side quests, so you're grinding out to level up, but it doesn't feel like you're grinding because you're doing all these different quests and stuff and they're keeping you busy. That's fine. But when they do a grind, like what Monster Hunter World did, or other games like Warframe or Destiny or whatever, where they make you sit there and repeat the same mission over and over and over and over to level up and maybe get a chance to get better gear, I'm like, no, screw that. I don't want to sit there for 4 or 6 hours doing the exact same thing on repeat to maybe get a chance to get one good piece of loot. That is a waste of my time. I can go play a different game for 4 to 6 hours and do 100 different things and have a great time. So I'm not going to sit there and just grind out and do the exact same thing on freaking repeat. You lost me. I'm not doing that. There are plenty of other gamers that like doing that grind stuff. I am not one of them. Alright? So no, that is a hard pass. Not happening. Another issue I had with Monster Hunter World was I felt they did a really bad job teaching people how to play the game. Whenever you play a game, they usually have like a small little tutorial to teach you how to do everything. So that way if you're brand new to the game, you never played anything like it before, you can kind of get the gist. This one did such a bad job that this was one of those kind of games where you have to go on YouTube to look up tutorial videos other gamers put up to try to tell you how to play the game. And I'm like, why in the hell am I going to YouTube to learn how to play the game? Why did the game tell me how to fucking play the goddamn game? Why is your game so designed so poorly that I have to go to somebody else to get help to play your stupid game? You should have did a better job. I should not have to go to freaking YouTube to learn how to play you. Alright, so no. Now, that was another thing that irritated me. So Monster Hunter World was hugely disappointing to me. Anyways, moving on, I'm gonna go with Fallout New Vegas. And I know a lot of you are gonna be like, what? There's no way that game was disappointing or overhyped. That game was amazing. Yada, yada, yada. Maybe for you it was, and that's fine. For me, I couldn't get into it. I really enjoyed Fallout 3, so I wanted to give New Vegas a shot. I tried it multiple times over, you know, like I would take like a year break in between or whatever. I tried it multiple times. And yeah, I could not get into the game. I'm not going to say there was anything wrong with it, you know, because it looked and felt like any other Fallout game. I don't know what it was about it, but for some reason, no matter how many times I tried to play that game, I didn't have any fun with it, and I couldn't get engaged, and I didn't get immersed. I just was bored. I was just bored. So I just gave up on trying to get into that game. I don't know what it is. Like, I can't sit here and tell you what I disliked, because if I sit here and think about it, it had everything that the other games had. So I don't know. I do not know. I can't explain it. I just could not get into New Vegas. I disliked it. I didn't have any fun with it. I was just, like I said, I was bored. So I just kind of cast that one off as not for me. And I really can't go into too much about that one because, like I said, I can't explain why I didn't like it. I wish I could. It baffles me why I can't like it or get into it. But yeah, so Fallout New Vegas was a disappointing game to me. Next would be the Witcher series. This is a series that everybody will come out and say, hey, do you like RPGs? Do you like fantasy? Then The Witcher is the game for you. And let me tell you, it is not. It is not. I never played the first one because during the time when the first one came out, I wasn't into PC gaming at all. So I didn't play that one. And then I had a whole bunch of friends be like, hey, you should really check out The Witcher, play Witcher 2. So I went ahead, I had the 360 at the time, so I was like, okay, fine, I'll give Witcher 2 a shot. I couldn't get into that game at all. The gameplay was not for me. Story-wise, it was good. I will applaud them. They did a really good job with telling a story, and they had really interesting characters. All right, and you know, and the game looked cool for the time period that it was created in, for graphics and things. It looked fine. The game looked pretty dope. But when I actually sat down and played it, I don't know, I didn't really like the gameplay. I didn't really care for the main character, Geralt. I don't know, I just don't really like him as a character. I liked a lot of the other characters. When it came to the main character, I didn't like him. And I do have a hard time with games when they force a character on you versus allowing you the option to pick one or create one yourself. There are plenty of games where they have pre-made main characters that I can get into. Like I said, Tomb Raider was one that I really love, and the original God of Wars, I really love those. And you know, those forced the character on you. You had to play as Lara Croft or Kratos. I didn't have a problem with those characters. They were interesting enough to where I enjoyed playing as them. But for The Witcher, I don't like Geralt. He bores me. He doesn't interest me at all. He's not my kind of a character. I don't like his personality. He's just meh to me. Like, I don't want anything to do with him. He's a snooze fest. So I couldn't really get into anything he was doing. And the game had a lot with trapping. They want you to keep making these like traps and things to put down, you know, and I wasn't really into that. That wasn't for me for the second game. And like, I was playing it, and I got to the point where you get to the Dwarven City. So I didn't get very far, I guess. Like, to me, I felt like I got pretty far, and I put enough time into it to where it took me a long time to get to the Dwarven City, because when I play an RPG, I don't just, you know, I'm not like flying through it. So in the end, the Dwarven City story-wise may not be that far, but it probably took me at least 20 plus hours to get there, because I am very meticulous, and I go through and I try to make sure I complete everything there is to complete before I progress in the main story. So it took me a long time to get to that point. That's when I lost complete interest in the game. I just could not navigate that frickin' city, and I got frustrated. I got frustrated with how the Dwarven City was a damn maze, and I could not figure out how to get through it to get to my my mission. And after fighting with going through the same buildings over and over and being lost in that city for a few hours, I just got fed up with it, and I was like, I'm done. Screw it, and I lost interest in it. And I was already not really that into the game anyway. Like I said, I didn't like Geralt, and I didn't like the combat mechanics and things like that. It wasn't for me. So I lost interest. And then Witcher 3 came out, and everybody was going freaking nuts about Witcher 3, about how this game is amazing and you have to play it. If you don't play it, then you don't like RPGs, yada, yada, yada. So I was like, fine, everyone keeps telling me I have to play it. So I go and I try playing that one. And once again, I could not get into it. It's, I still don't like Geralt. They made it to where, like, he would barely walk off of a stone and he would be, like, twisting his freaking, like, breaking his damn leg. And I'm like, what is this shit? Trying to navigate was a mess. Combat, once again, wasn't to my liking. It wasn't my style. There's plenty of other people that enjoyed the way that the combat's done for The Witcher, which is fine. Like, everybody has things that they like. For me, it's not my style. I don't, like I've said, for me, when I play an RPG, I prefer to be ranged using a bow, all right, or dual wielding. And if I'm dual wielding, I want to be fast. I want to go in, do some really quick DPS, and then get the heck out. The Witcher doesn't play like that. The Witcher, he's running around with this two-handed sword, and combat is slow. And I don't want to play that way. And the game forces me to play that way because that's how that character is designed. So it's not for me. It's not my play style. All right? When I play an RPG, I want options. I want to be able to pick a character that works within my play style, not be forced to play as someone of a play style that I would never use. And The Witcher does that. I do not like that play style. It is not for me. I'm not saying it's a bad play style, but it's bad for me. All right, so that's that. So yeah, I just could not get in The Witcher. So I find The Witcher to be super disappointing. I just can't get into it. Next would be Final Fantasy 15. I could not get in that one either. Oh my god, Final Fantasy is not for me. I've tried playing it on PS1, and then everyone's like, yo, you should really try it again. Here's 15's coming out. This one will be for you, and it'll be a good game to, get people into the series that aren't fans already. So I was like, fine, whatever, I'll give it a go. Boot that game up. The characters are annoying. They're like this annoying boy band, and I just can't stand their dialogue or the characters. And then you have to sit there doing these stupid, like, little mini things, like fishing, which was super bugged and broken when I was playing it. I went to do the fishing quest, and my game bugged out, and I couldn't quit, and I had a hassle trying to get out of that. And then I didn't like the fighting mechanics with the jumping around and stuff. It wasn't my style yet again. You do this weird thing where you warping to like these far distances to be up high, then you come down and you like zip all over the place. That's not for me. I'm not really into anime games to begin with, so I couldn't get into that. And then the thing that really broke it down for me was when I went to go turn in a story quest, and the game was so broken that I couldn't even turn in the story quest because the quest giver was missing in my game. He didn't exist. They had the marker where he was supposed to be, and he just never showed up. Ever. And I was like, you know what? I don't like Final Fantasy. People keep trying to get me into it. I have zero interest in it. I enjoyed the characters that they put in for Kingdom Hearts because it was a good blend. Because it didn't play like a Final Fantasy game, it just had the characters. That was cool. But when you play Final Fantasy by itself, I can't stand it. Alright, it's not for me. Alright? I don't care how big of a fan you are. I am not one. Stop trying to make me one. I freaking cannot stand Final Fantasy. And I'm done with that series. Alright? It's not for me. And the fact that I went to and I gave it a shot and my game was so bugged out and broken and glitched just made me resent that series even more. So I was not happy. And then there was Borderlands 3. Borderlands 3. That game is a piece of trash, man. I love Borderlands. Okay, don't get me wrong. I absolutely love Borderlands. I put a lot of time and hours into playing the first two. Borderlands 2 is where I met some of my best gaming friends that I still play with today. Alright? Loads of fun, multiple playthroughs, great time. Great story, great characters, great comedy. I love it all. The guns, everything. Love it. Then Borderlands 3 came out, and I felt like they were trying too hard. The characters were super cringy. The loot was tragic. It seemed like the loot that I was getting was always like 6 or more levels below me all the time, and it was just terrible. The story was terrible. The really cool characters that I loved the most were either not in the game or very rarely even used. or if they were used, they weren't used to their full potential that they normally would have been. So the whole experience as a whole was tragic. I freaking hate Borderlands 3, and that's another one that I scrap up to. It doesn't exist. It was a travesty, and that game is dead to me. All right. Next would be Fallout 76. There's not much I can say about that. Everybody already knows Fallout 76 was one of the most overhyped, disappointing games of the generation. It came out and it was bugged and broken, and it had so many flaws. It was, anybody who knows anything about gaming will know. If you bring up the Fallout 76, everybody knows the problems with Fallout 76. I don't really need to go into it. You already know. All right, Fallout 76 was trash. Next would be Outer Worlds. Now, Outer Worlds, for those who do not know, is a game made by Obsidian. Obsidian also made Fallout New Vegas, which I did not like at all. I was open to Outer Worlds because the game looked a lot like Fallout, which is, I do like Fallout. And they were giving it a sci-fi spin instead of like a post-apocalyptic world that Fallout has. And I love me some sci-fi. So I was super interested in doing some Outer Worlds, right? But then I played the game, and it was definitely overhyped and disappointing to me because it didn't feel like it was its own game. I literally felt like I was playing Fallout in space, and it just had a different title, which was Outer Worlds, so that they wouldn't get in trouble for like copyright or anything. So basically they made Fallout and they just threw it in a different, put a sci-fi skin on it, and then they changed the title so that way they could, do that. And I'm just like, no, the game didn't stand apart. Okay, if it's supposed to be this brand new IP, why does it not feel like it didn't feel like it was its own game. As I was playing it, I felt like I was playing Fallout. It felt exactly like Fallout. It didn't feel like its own thing, and that's the problem. If you're making a new IP, it needs to stand apart from all the other games out there and be its own thing, and it wasn't. It wasn't. It was freaking Fallout with a different title on it, and it was reskinned. That was it. Alright, so that's hugely disappointing to me. The characters, to me, were not interesting when it comes to like your crew. I did not like a lot of the characters. I think it was Pavardi or whatever her name was. She was one of the most agitating, annoying characters to me in the entire game. She didn't know when to shut up. She just talked too much, and everything she talked about just wasn't important. It really wasn't. And I mean, yeah, cool. I mean, and then they, oh my god, and then I love it when there's relationship stuff in the games and stuff. But if you're gonna do relationship stuff, it should be my relationship stuff. It should be me trying to build a relationship with someone, not me doing all the legwork to help so-and-so date so-and-so. Why in the hell can't they freaking get their shit together and do that on their own? Why am I the one, sending the love letters back and forth? Why am I the one going and buying chocolates and getting the outfits and stuff for their date? Like, no. Get your shit together. If you really like this person, then prove it. No one does that. All right? No one does that. If you like somebody, you got to prove it. You got to put forth the effort to show that you're willing to go the extra mile and do nice things and show them that you give a damn. Not ask your buddy, hey, can you go and do all this stuff and say I did it? No. Get out of here. No, that shit was tragic. All right? No, I couldn't stand that. Just really annoyed me. I couldn't stand her. Most of the characters were just kind of dull. You just really didn't feel like you're doing much of anything in the game. You go and you would explore and take out some enemies, stuff, deal with some corporate problem stuff, just like you would in Fallout, and pick a side, just like in Fallout. And then the game is done. It was just, it didn't stand apart, and I didn't like that. I will say that Obsidian did a fantastic job, though, when it came to like the gameplay, for how fluid and stuff that the controls were like. Bethesda, the ones who created the Fallout series that this is basically a spoof of, Bethesda has this bad problem of having their games being unfinished. They're always really buggy, they're not polished, the controls can be clunky. They always boast that they have these great games, but then they're just they're super flawed and broken, and I hate that. And so Obsidian did a great job with showing that, hey, this is how the game could be if, you know, Bethesda put more love and care in their stuff. This is what they could have. You know, you can have this game with these great controls and great battle mechanics and gunplay and, you know, pretty graphics and all the extra, you know, bells and whistles, and still have interesting, because like Bethesda does a good job. They do have interesting characters and good stories and stuff, but then they lack when it comes to, you know, how good the game is in terms of, you know, like I said, their stuff is really has a lot of bugs and glitches, and the controls are clunky, and it's just, you know, broken. So Obsidian is like, hey, let's show you how you can do that, and they did a great job. So I do applaud them on that aspect, but then they missed out on having the good story and the interesting character part. So basically, if you take how Outer Worlds looks and plays, and you put Bethesda's amazing characters and storylines and their writing into there, you would have one hell of an amazing game if you combine the two. If you take the best from the two, you'd have one of the best RPGs out there. Seriously, one of the best RPGs out there. But you don't. Either you play Bethesda and you get a broken piece of shit with a great story, or you can play Obsidian, you have a pretty game with a shitty story. You know, so take your pick. So that's how I feel on that front. So let's move on to the next segment here after a short break. Are you someone who is into podcasts? Perhaps you want to have a really cool library where you can find some great podcasts to listen to on your commute to work. Or maybe you're looking to create one yourself. Well, let me tell you about Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast, all right? It's free. It has creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your PC. Anchor will also distribute your podcast for you. Complete ease, hassle-free, so that way you can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as many more outlets. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. Okay, folks? Everything you need to make a podcast in one place. It's fantastic, all right? And if you want to get started right now, all you got to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. So now we'll go ahead and we'll move into the next segment, which is games that I feel are underrated. So for me, I'm going to kick that off with Darksiders. Now, Darksiders is an RPG that comes from THQ Nordic. Okay, and Darksiders has a lot of stuff that feels like, gameplay-wise, that feels like a lot of other games. So when you're playing, let's say, like the first Darksiders, you're like, oh, okay, so this game kind of models after, you know, classic God of War. And then you'll play the second Darksiders, and oh, okay, you can tell that they kind of got some inspiration from, let's say, like Prince of Persia. And I think that's really, really cool. And then each game in the series, you know, kind of gives you that different feel for a different game franchise, which is really cool, while still making it its own thing, which is the most important part. Is, yes, you can be inspired by someone, but you need to stand apart and make it your own, not a blatant copy, which, like I said before, Outer Worlds failed with, because it was just a blatant copy. It didn't stand apart. They were inspired by Fallout, but then they didn't do anything about it to make it something other than Fallout. Darksiders, it's just a lot of fun. Like, I highly recommend, you guys really should check it out if you've never played it. All right. I even had a friend who was like, nah, Darksiders doesn't seem like it's that really cool. It's not for me. And I know what kind of games he's kind of into. He's into a lot of the same stuff I am. So I was like, you know what? Trust me. This is something that you're really going to like. And he went and he played it. And he got addicted, man. He got obsessed. He's like, oh my gosh, this game is so cool. And he went and he freaking marathoned through all of them. And he had a blast with it, and he loved it, and he thanked me for getting him into it, because now he's a fan. And yeah, it's one of those series that is a lot of fun to play. They have good puzzles in there, really fun combat, a lot of cool combos. It's got a little bit more of a cartoony design to it versus going for realism, which is nice. It follows the story of the Four Horsemen, but they give it like their own little twist. But it's a lot of fun, and it is one of those games that I feel didn't get the proper reception that it deserves, because they are fantastic games. And yes, I'm telling you right now, if you are into RPGs that aren't super technical, you know, you want more of like an action style RPG that's fast paced, then Darksiders is definitely for you. Go check those out. They're great. They are great. And then another one would be Shadows Awakening. Now, Shadows Awakening, most people don't know about. It came out in 2018 by Calypso Media, and it is available on PC as well as on console. So if you have, you know, Xbox One or PS4 or whatever, you can go ahead and you can get it. Shadows Awakening was really, really cool to me because now this is going to be your isometric, you know, top-down style RPG, so that may not appeal to everybody, but gameplay-wise, it's a lot of fun. You get to pick from, you know, your different characters, whether you want to be, you know, like your, you know, like the knight or the rogue or like the mage type. You get to pick one of those characters. They're pre-made though. They're pre-made characters, but you should get the option to choose which play style is for you, which is cool. And then it takes another twist where it allows you to play between basically like two different dimensions. So basically you have this demon, right? And he's kind of in charge. So he goes and he finds your character who's dead. And he's like, okay, I can't go into the mortal world or whatever, but I can use you to do it. So I can give you a chance to basically be alive again if you do my bidding or whatever. So you're basically his puppet. So you go and you do things in the mortal world. You can find more puppets for him to control, so you can play as multiple characters at once, which is pretty cool, right? And then if there's something you can't do, you switch it over to like the Shadow Realm side, and you go through the same level you're already in, and now you might see like ghosts or different enemies that weren't there before that you need to take out, and you fight as the demon guy, which is pretty cool. And I just really like that. And usually when you play a game like this, we have like multiple characters. Usually it has to be another person that plays those. This one, you get to play as all of them, and you can switch between them. So it's not like you are controlling your character and then occasionally you can switch over to another or anything like that. You literally, if you decide, you know what, I only want to play with one of these other characters, you can just play with one of those other characters, you know, and then and have fun, and then switch back to your main one when the main one has to interact with something for their main story or whatever. And it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, and you can pick and choose which ones you're going to get based on decisions you make in the game. Someone you might save might become a puppet, versus you might decide not to save them and you would lose them. There's going to be characters that can only be interacted with by a specific main character. So let's say you pick the mage lady to play with, right? And you might come up to this guy that you can interact with, and then you can do some interactions or whatever. But if you had played as the rogue, then you would be able to question him differently, and then that would give you a different quest line. Now, that guy now becomes a quest giver because of the dialogue options that the rogue character would have that your character, your mage character, did not. So it gives you replayability in that, you know, you want to play as all the other characters, so you can get different quests you didn't get to play before. You get a different story for each one, and a different ending. There's still like the base main story that you play through the game, but then as you're playing through the main story, each character has like their story, all right, that you're helping them with as their deal for, you know, helping the demon. So you're getting multiple stories through the multiple playthroughs. So that's really, really cool, and I love that they did that. A lot of games today, in my opinion, don't have that replayability factor. They're one and done. This one is one that's, you kind of want to play it again and again, because you want to see how these other characters talk to the NPCs, what kind of quests they get, how the ending will differ because you had them do the main story versus the others. And it's cool. It's cool, and I highly recommend it. Lots of fun. It's a single player game. Like I said, it is a isometric style RPG, but if you're into that, definitely give it a go. Lots of fun. Highly recommend. It was actually my game of the year, my personal choice for game of the year for best indie game for 2018. I freaking loved it. And like I said, whether you're on Xbox, PlayStation, or PC, you have access to this game. Once again, Shadows Awakening. It's a must play. All right, super underrated. Most people have never heard of it because it was it's made by an indie developer that, you know, isn't well known. So check it out. It is so good. Another one that I feel is underrated is Kingdoms of Amalor Reckoning. Now, they finally announced that they're working on making a reboot or a remaster or something like that, which is freaking amazing because that game was so good. And I originally played it on the 360. All right, the Xbox 360. And you can make different kinds of characters or whatever, you know, whenever you play a fantasy game, you're always going to get the generic, you know, warrior type, rogue type, magic type. You know, they're in all fantasy games usually, unless they force you on something. So you get to pick and choose. For me, when I played it, I played as a rogue that had like these chakrams and stuff. So I was just throwing these chakrams out at everybody, cutting enemies down, having them come back so I could just keep moving. So I was just flying through these enemies, just slicing, dicing, man. It was so fun. And I played it on the hardest difficulty. And for me, I did feel like the game was too easy. Now, I have a friend who also played the game, but they played it with a magic type character and they struggled big time. So definitely the way you build your character is a huge factor because I built my character so darn good that I had there was no opposition for me. I was OP. All right. And I had fun. And it also has that, so it's kind of like more of a, for me, from the way that I was playing it, it was more of a hack and slash action RPG experience, whereas that may differ for others. Like I said, if you're doing the magic type. Yeah, I just had a lot of fun, and it has that, and it had a really cute cartoon art style that I also enjoy in games. I don't like everything to be realistic. Sometimes I do enjoy having some stuff that's more cartoony, and that was one that was definitely cartoony, and I really, really enjoyed it. And I feel a lot of people kind of slept on that game, but definitely something you should definitely check out. Fantastic game, loved it. Looking forward to it coming out again for next gen, or possibly next. It's probably gonna be next gen. I doubt it's gonna come out this year, so it'll be amazing. So when it does come out again, definitely pick it up and give it a go. Next up is a game that came out last year, Greedfall. Now this is made by Spiders. They're a smaller developer. I was already interested in playing the game because I really loved their previous game, which is also one that I would say is underrated, and that would be Bound by Flame. Bound by Flame is another RPG that took some inspiration from RPGs like Dragon Age or Mass Effect, where you make your own character, you meet up with other characters that become part of your team. There's going to be two sides to the story where this character is not going to like the other one, so you have to pick a side. And then you have your romance option, and then you go and you complete the story. So just like how Mass Effect and Dragon Age do it, right? You could have one of your companions could end up leaving your team once you side with the other one, which is interesting. You can't keep everybody, you can't make everybody happy. Eventually you're going to be like, well, this companion I like and this one I don't, so I'm going to keep you and the other one's going to leave, which was a really, really cool concept. That whereas in other games, they allow you to have your cake and eat it too, so to speak, where you can kind of play all fields and keep everybody. This one's like, no. There's consequences, which is cool. And another thing I really liked about Bound by Flame is it was one of the first games that allowed you to put all the different playstyles into one character. And what I mean by is, normally when you play a fantasy RPG, you have to play as a warrior type, or the rogue type, or the wizard magic type, and that's it. This one, you can be all three. So you pick your character, and you will have 3 separate skill trees between warrior, rogue, and magic, and you can pick and choose what skills you want, and you can literally play as all 3 in one character, and it's so fun. All right, it's so fun. When you get to the ending, I'm not going to spoil it, but the final boss on Bound by Flame is by far my most memorable boss fight. My most memorable boss fight because it was the hardest for me in a long time. Games from like last generation and this current generation are so much easier than games I grew up with, you know, back in like the 90s. All right. So when you go and you get a game that actually gives you that struggle that you remember from when you were playing the, you know, retro games of the day, that leaves an impact on you. Most games today are so easy comparatively to retro games that I grew up with. The final boss was tough, super tough. Took me a long time to beat it. If you don't go in there prepared, you're screwed. Situation. You need to make sure before you trigger that final counter to final boss, you have the right amount of health potions and throwing knives or whatever you are going to be using based on your playstyle. You need to make sure you're super stocked up on whatever you're using. Otherwise, you're not going to get through that fight. You know, you're going to be decimated. And oh my gosh, it was really, really tough. And I struggled with it. It took me a long time to beat it. And then when I finally did, it was the biggest celebration ever. And it will always be, like I said, one of my most memorable moments in a game because of the struggle I had with that boss. And it felt so good to beat it. And I just love the game overall. And most people have never played it because, like I said, it's made by Spiders, which is a small developer. And so people haven't heard of it or even played Bound by Flame. Go ahead and check that out. It is great. It was on Xbox 360, PS3, and whatnot. And I think they did make it backwards compatible. So if you're on Xbox One, you can play it. They might have it on PS4. Don't quote me on it. I don't know for sure. But go ahead and find it and check that out. Definitely underrated. And that ties into Spider's newest game, which is Greedfall, which is another one that was fantastic. I had a lot of fun with it, and it's also super underrated. I played through it, and I was so upset after I beat the game because the game did not get nominated for like awards. It did get nominated for awards, but not like the big ones that it should have got nominated for. It was just such a well done game by a low budget small developer, and because it wasn't a AAA title, it got passed over. And I really hate it when things like that happen. Okay, the Game Awards should not only be for AAA games, and they have definitely expanded to where they have like their special little indie game noticed area where they get their own separate award. But why are they getting recognized as an indie game as a separate thing? They should be allowed to compete with the big boys that are the AAAs, in my opinion. All right, if they're all making the same games within the same genres and they meet the same criteria, they should be in the same voting, in my opinion. And Greedfall, it did not get listed in any of the big nominations that it should have been in, and I was very, very upset. Even if it wasn't going to win, that would have been fine, but it deserved to at least be nominated. The gameplay was a lot of fun. The fighting mechanics were different compared to other RPGs I played, so it took me a while to learn how to do the combat in that game because it was so different. But I love that it was different because you can't just go into it and play it like any other game and be like, okay, I know what I'm doing, which is cool. But they did it in a way to where you were, even though it was different, you were able to learn and pick it up and without having to struggle and, you know, go on YouTube, you know, like Monster Hunter did. So so it was great. And the story was good. You had romance options. It was, you know, again, they took inspiration from games like Dragon Age, and you would have your companions and you could romance your companions. But they made the romancing difficult, like really difficult. You go and you play something from BioWare, you know, like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, you already know, okay, this is the person I'm into, this is the one I'm going to romance. And it's very, very easy for you to romance them. You know, it's very easy to pick the right dialogue to get it done without any issues. You know, you can play the game your very, very first time and you're pretty much guaranteed to romance the person you intended to. Whereas Greedfall, the person that I wanted to romance, I didn't get the right dialogue options because they make it so much more complicated to where it's not an easy, oh, this is the one that they like situation. Whereas like BioWare kind of tells you which, like they color code everything or they put a special symbol next to it so you know which ones are the romance options. They kind of give it away. This one doesn't. So you can literally mess up everything with dialogue and not get the romance you want. And so I did not get my romance. I ended up getting a romance with somebody I had no interest in, and I was not even trying to romance that individual, and I ended up getting that one. And so when it happened, I just did it for the achievement, and then I dumped them right after. I broke up with them because I had no interest in that individual. They were one and done. I broke their heart, but it was like, I just really liked how they made that really difficult. So I need to go back and play it again and try to get my romance that I wanted, because I never got it. And so they made that difficult, which is really cool. It had a good story. Overall, it was great. The music is really well done. I really enjoyed the music, and it's just, if you're a fan of Dragon Age, check out Greedfall if you haven't. And just be, like I said, be ready. The romances are not cut and dry, easy to figure out, and your combat is going to be different from any of the other RPGs you've played before it. So there will be a small learning curve, but once you figure it out and you get into that game, it's so much fun. So much fun, highly underrated. It's a must play. Spiders does a great job with their games. So check out both of their games, Bound by Flame and Greedfall. They're worth it, my friends. Alright, and then one other one I want to mention then for underrated is an indie game that came out in 2016 called Masquerada Song in Shadows, and it was made by Witching Hour Studio. Now this game is a tactical style RPG. It's got the cartoon style art, and it's so much fun. It's just so much fun, and like I said, because it's an indie game, it gets swept under the rug and passed over. You know, people don't talk about these games that are well done and deserve to get some recognition. They only talk about AAA games, which is bullshit, because there are some indie devs out there that work really hard and make amazing games, and no one's gonna know about these amazing games because no one talks about them. They only want to fill the news with AAA games only, and that biasness needs to stop. Alright? Give the credit where the credit is due. If an indie developer creates a fantastic game, they deserve recognition for it. Yes, there are lots of indie devs out there that throw games out that are a hot freaking mess and they're disasters, but you know, it might be their very first game that they made straight out of college or something. So it's, you know, fine. If the game's no good, it's no good. But give the credit to those that make amazing games, you know, and Song in Shadows here is an amazing game. Lots of freaking fun. Alright, check that out. Really would love for more people to check out some of these games that that people just don't know about. So please, that one is on Masquerada Song in Shadows is available on PC, Xbox One, PS4, and even Nintendo Switch. So go get it and play it and have fun. It's fun. Like I said, it is a tactical style RPG, but it is fun. And I'm someone who doesn't really get into the tactical style RPGs, but this one was really fun to play. And it isn't really slow and boring like a lot of tactical ones are. They're real slow, you know? So this one has a good pacing. And it's easy to play. It's not going to be overly complicated. Alright, so go ahead and check it out. You will have a good time with it and enjoy it for sure. That concludes my underrated picks for RPGs. Trust me, I could be adding a lot more to these lists if I was including other genres, but I'm trying to just put focus into RPGs. Last part of this episode is going to be me just kind of listing up and going over my top picks for RPGs, my favorites, my personal faves. So you guys kind of have an idea of if I was going to pick like my go-to RPG game that I would play again and again and again, these would be the ones I would be choosing from. Okay? First off would be the Mass Effect series. Absolutely love it. Alright, I know there's going to be people out there that be like, well, the ending for 3 was no good, and then they made Andromeda. And it's like, yes, okay. Look, you can have an amazing franchise or amazing series and still have some bad stuff in it. Alright, look at your favorite movie actors. All your favorite movie actors probably had shitty movies that you dislike, but you still like the actor, right? So just because a game series has a bad game or something doesn't mean the series automatically gets cast out as trash. Alright? Look at Resident Evil. Resident Evil, you know, for Resident Evil fans, there are very, very good games with the series, and then there are definitely some really, really bad ones. But you don't cast off the whole series because of the bad ones, do you? No. So you guys got to get over that fact that, yes, Andromeda was a thing that was not accepted by everybody, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop liking Mass Effect because of it. Alright, so those people need to get over that. But Mass Effect was fantastic. I had a lot of fun playing through them. I loved them all. Andromeda, though, I would say I did not like. But the story was really, really good. Andromeda, because I know people are going to want to know what I thought about it. Combat mechanics were amazing. The main story was really, really well done. I really enjoyed it. My issues with Andromeda lay into the side quests were just monotonous and tedious. They held no importance. So it was just filler. And a lot of times when you play an RPG, you know the side quests are filler, but they're still fun. In this case, you knew you were playing filler, and it wasn't even fun filler. Alright? The side quests were boring, and they were just a waste of your time. And you did them just so you could level up. That was the only reason why you did them. So that was a fail. The characters that were your companions within your crew were uninteresting to me. There was only one character that I liked, and I couldn't even romance that character because I played as a female, so I couldn't even romance that character. They were off limits. So that sucked. And then, when you do romance the characters, the romances in that game were terrible. If you look back at the romance scenes in Mass Effect 1, 2, or 3, they were way better. Especially 3. 3 had some pretty good romance scenes in it. Even 2. Like the stuff with like Miranda was pretty sexy, right? You take that experience, and then you go and you play Andromeda, and it felt like they were being prudish. Like they were all of a sudden feeling ashamed. Like they didn't want to do anything. You gotta keep in mind though, Andromeda was made by a different team, in a different studio within BioWare. It wasn't the original team, because they were busy working on, I think Anthem at the time or something like that. So they ended up getting the team to a different brand new team to make this game, and that definitely felt like they were a little scared to really go into the romances to the depth that the previous games had went into, and so the romances sucked. So not a fan of that. And the game also had its problems with bugs and glitches and stuff like that too. That really is what gave it really bad publicity. But but that stuff got patched pretty freaking quickly, but people just can't move on from that. The game is more than just that fact. I mean, there's plenty of other games that are bugged out and then they get patched and then people still love them, even when they're bugged. But this one, it was bugged and people didn't want to give it that same chance that they give the other games. So there was some biasness with that too. When you put that aside and you look at the game as a whole, if you play through the game and you don't really put a lot of focus into the side quests, and you just focus on main story, that game is pretty damn cool. It really is. Like I said, the gameplay and the combat is really, really good. The story missions are really, really good. So if you just focus on that, you could have one hell of a freaking experience and have fun. It's the moment you try to get the full experience and play all the side quests and try to do the romances, that's when you're going to feel super disappointed. My advice is, you should definitely play Andromeda, but if you do it, just focus on the main story. And if you end up being somebody who's really enjoying the game and maybe you really like the crew and stuff, then yeah, by all means, go into trying to romance them and doing the side quests. There are plenty of people out there that really enjoyed Andromeda for what it was. So, and there's nothing wrong with that either. So maybe you will be like them and you'll go into it if you have an open mind and you will really enjoy it for what it is. But otherwise, if you are a little skeptical, then I would say to play it safe, just focus on doing the main missions and you'll be good. But yes, I absolutely love the Mass Effect series. Highly recommend everybody should play through those, for sure. Next up is going to be Dragon Age. The only reason why I checked out Dragon Age was because I really liked Mass Effect so much. And Dragon Age was the older series that BioWare had already done, and I didn't really know anything about it. Didn't interest me at all. But then I fell in love with Mass Effect so much, I wanted to know what else BioWare made, so I looked it up, and I'm like, okay, they made this game called Dragon Age. So I went ahead and I picked up Origins. I got like the special complete edition or whatever of Origins for Xbox that allowed me to get all the DLC and everything included. So I went and I got that, and I played through that, and I got so immersed into Origins. I loved it so much that I just fell in love with the game, and I did like multiple playthroughs of it. I just really fell in love with it, and so I had to play the next ones. So I had to go ahead and I had to check out what else they had. So I played Dragon Age 2, and I absolutely loved that one as well. I know there's going to be fans out there that dislike 2, and you have your own reasons. But for me, as someone who's primarily a console gamer, as well as a PC gamer, I enjoyed it. Origins was definitely designed on the PC model, even though that they had it on consoles. And I was fine with that, because I play both. And then Dragon Age 2 was definitely designed on the console model versus PC, so the PC fan base was very upset. But again, I was fine with it, because I play both. I had a lot of fun with it. Isabella is one of my all-time favorite characters from the Dragon Age series. She was just a fun companion character that brought some humor and some life to the series, and I just loved her. And then they had Inquisition. Inquisition was really good too, and then the Inquisition was their way to try to compromise to appease both the console fans and the PC fans. So they threw different elements into the game that allowed the people to play it their way. So if you're the PC side, you could do more of the tactical view and play that way, and those of you that were console could try to make it more of an action RPG if you wanted to, or you could, you know, pick and choose between them and, you know, switch off and do whatever you wanted to do, and that was fine. But for me, I didn't enjoy Inquisition as much as I enjoyed Origins or Dragon Age 2. Now, Inquisition, don't get me wrong, is still a really good game. I highly recommend it. I do love it. But when it comes to the series as a whole, for me personally, it was the weakest one. I liked it the least. I would definitely pick Dragon Age Origins and 2 over Inquisition any day. I just really preferred those two. But Inquisition is still a really good game, and I do recommend playing it. Another RPG that is among my favorites is Dragon's Dogma, which was a game from Capcom. And it's actually probably one of the only games from Capcom that I support. I'm not a fan of Capcom. I'm sorry. I know anybody out there who loves Dead Rising or Resident Evil or Devil May Cry or whatever, I'm gonna hurt a part of your soul. I'm sorry. I don't like any of those games. I'm not a fan. I played a lot of them because people had gotten them for me and wanted me to play them, so I did. But I do not like them. Alright? Dragon's Dogma was definitely the first and only game that Capcom has made that actually appealed to me, and I really loved it. I had a lot of fun with it, and they had this really cool thing where other people could play the game and their characters could be like put into like the cloud or whatever, and you can go and you could add your friend's character to become one of like your side companions to be in your group, which was really cool. Like, that's never before. I never saw that done before in a game. You know, usually you have like, your own characters within the game, or you have a friend join your game and play with you. This was pretty cool, where your friend's character could come and join you in your game and play with you without your friend. You know, so it was cool. And yeah, it had really good fun gameplay and amazing fights and stuff with large creatures like griffins and things. A lot of fun. And then yeah, I just had a lot of fun with it, and I do recommend Dragon's Dogma if you never played it. Now, I played the original one. Later on, they re-released it as Dark Arisen, where they made some enhancements or whatever for it to kind of update it. I did not play that version. Okay, I did not play the Dark Arisen version. I played the original version. They didn't have like the Dark Arisen version. I understand it. They added some new features as well, like a harder difficulty mode and some other stuff that they added to it that the original did not have. So yeah, I did not have those. And they also had this kind of like this community boss fight thing. They had like this tower you'd go in, and there would be like this huge dragon you would have to fight as a community. So other players would play the game, they would go in. So it kind of, at that point, it would be kind of like an MMO experience, you know, when you have like your big world boss. You get like 80 plus different players, and you sit there and you fight this guy all at one time. So it's kind of like that, only you weren't fighting it, like you didn't see the other people. So you were fighting it one-on-one, but it would record whatever damage you did to it, plus all the damage other people were doing to it, and then they would put that together as a whole until you killed it, you know, as a community. And they would have a timer on it to do it, and if you didn't beat it within that timer, then it reset and he would get his health back or whatever. So that was pretty cool little aspect. So, but yeah, so Dragon's Dogma definitely high on my list for best RPGs, in my opinion, the ones that I would love to, play again. And if they ever did a remaster for Dragon's Dogma, or even a sequel for next gen, that would be amazing. Next, Divinity. I've recently gotten into the Divinity series. I played Divinity Original Sin 1 and 2. Those are your tactical, isometric style RPGs. Had a lot of fun playing those. And because I enjoyed those so much, I started playing one of the older games, which was Divinity 2, the Dragon Knight Saga, which is a third-person action RPG. And I'm still playing that one right now. I'm almost through it. I'm currently level 25 or so, and I think you cap out around level 30. I'm almost through that game, and I'm having a lot of fun playing it. It definitely has a lot of those challenges where you don't just know what you're supposed to do all the time. Sometimes it puts some, it makes you do some thinking, which is a thing that I love. I love when games make me think. Games today, like I said, are too easy. They hold your hand, but this is one that follows that old feel of, we're not telling you what you need to do all the time. You need to figure it out. And the Divinity games definitely do that. You have to figure it out. All right? And there's many ways, especially in the original Sin games, there are many ways you can complete a quest. There's usually a super easy, straightforward way you could solve it. But if you take the time to go and talk to other people and explore the world more, you may find a different way you could solve it that will give you a better outcome and better loot and stuff. Versus you be like, okay, this is how I gotta solve it. Let me just get it done right now. So they basically reward you for not flying through it and taking the time to go the extra mile for your quests, which is really, really cool. But so yeah, I highly recommend the Divinity series. The original Sin 1 and 2, you can get those on PC as well as on console. I was playing them on Xbox One. Divinity 2, the Dragon Knight Saga that I'm playing, it was a 360 copy that I had that's backwards compatible, so I'm playing that on Xbox One through that. I think it's available on PC as well. I honestly can't tell you guys if PlayStation has these games or not. I honestly do not know. So I don't want to say, yeah, they have it, and then they don't. So if you're interested and you're PlayStation only, then go ahead and look it up and see if they have them. But yes, I do really, really love them, and I highly recommend you check those out. And then another RPG series that would be in the top of my list would be Fable. Now, I got started in the series by playing, I did it backwards. I started with Fable 3. So I know a lot of people who played them in order, they really disliked Fable 3, but for me, that was the first one I played, so I had no other expectations or anything to base it off of. So I actually had a very, very good, positive experience playing Fable. Starting with 3, I really enjoyed Fable 3, I had a lot of fun with it. Played it with a lot of friends, and then I went ahead and tried Fable 2, and I had a lot of fun with Fable 2, and you played with different characters between the two. You had different heroes, and I like that you could, choose to be good or evil, and it shapes the world differently based on that, which is really, really cool. And I really love the British humor that those games had. Lionhead Studios did a fantastic job when they made those games. I really feel bad that Microsoft had to cut them out. Fable was so good. Playground is making the new Fable game, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how that turns out. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt that they're going to do a great job. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. The very first Fable, though, I never played. I do own Fable Anniversary, which is kind of like, I guess, like the remaster of the original with some differences. And I just never got around to playing it. I do own it, and I keep meaning to do it. Maybe now that the new Fable's coming out, maybe it'll push me to play Anniversary so I can play the first game and kind of get an idea of what I was missing out on and get the other part of the story. Because in the Fable 2 and 3, they do make a lot of references that tie back to the first one, and I never played it. So it is on my backlog of things I do need to do. But because I really enjoyed 2 and 3, it's definitely, like I said, on my list of best RPGs. The Torchlight series. I love the Torchlight games. Those very similar to things like Diablo, without them being Diablo. Diablo is more gritty, more of a dungeon delver, whereas Torchlight even though it's made by a lot of the same people that make Diablo. They got a lot of the same people to join in their studio. I think it's Runic that makes it. They got a lot of people from Blizzard that make Diablo come over to Runic to help make the Torchlight games. So that's why you're going to notice a lot of similarities between the two, while they still stand apart as their own thing. Torchlight has more of that cartoony look that I like, and the gameplay is a lot of fun. The first one is single player, but then you start getting into the other Torchlight games and you can do co-op, which is fun. The newest one is, they have it on early access or whatever right now on PC, and it's supposed to be coming to console. I'm waiting for it to come to console because I have friends that I played the other ones with that are console only, so I'm waiting for the console version so I can play with them. Otherwise, if I was going to play it solo, I would definitely go through the PC version for sure. But I want to do co-op, so I'm waiting for the console version for them, so I can play Torchlight 3. But yeah, lots of fun. So it's a good RPG. It is the top-down style like Diablo, and you do dungeon delving like Diablo, but it focuses more on questing. Whereas Diablo has its quests, but the quests Diablo, for me, the storyline is pretty short, and then they focus more on just dungeon delving a lot to get loot and stuff. Whereas Torchlight, they focus more heavily on doing quests and stuff, and then eventually it becomes like Diablo, where all you do is dungeon delve. But I feel like their storyline lasts a lot longer. The Tales of series. The Tales of series. Now, those of you who really know me, you know that I don't really get into JRPGs or anime games too much. I do have, some here and there that I do get into. But overall, I would not say by any means that I am a JRPG fan, because I'm not. You guys could all day long list off all the amazing games. I can tell you right now, I haven't played any of them. I haven't, because I have no interest in them. The Tales of series is great. I really, really enjoyed that one. I got started with Tales of Zestiria on PS4, and I had a lot of fun with it. I really liked it. So then I looked back, and I found Tales of Symphonia. So I went back and I played that one, and I really was enjoying that one as well. It was really, really well done, really cool. Really, made me get a feel for like retro gaming again with that one. And I do own Berseria. I started it, but I haven't really gotten that far into it. I'm like literally in the beginning. I need to play more of that one. They have Tales of Rise is coming out soon, so I have a lot of on my backlog when it comes to the Tales of series. But it's definitely a series that I want to note. It deserves, to be known, and it is one of the few JRPGs that I can stand behind and play and have a good time with. So definitely go ahead and check those out if you haven't already. Elder Scrolls is another one. I'm sure there's a lot of you guys that are Elder Scrolls fans. I absolutely love Elder Scrolls. Started off with Skyrim. Freaking put a lot of time into Skyrim. Loved it. And then because of that, I went back and I played Oblivion. Put a lot of time in Oblivion. Absolutely loved it. And then because of that, I went ahead and I got into Elder Scrolls Online, which I also loved. I know that one's going to be, a hit or miss with some of you guys. Some of you guys are going to really hate that, but I loved Elder Scrolls Online. I even went in during a sale and I bought Morrowind, so I own Morrowind. I have not played it. It's on my backlog, but I do own Morrowind, and I have been meaning to go and give that one a go because everyone talks about how that one's really, really good. Despite the fact that Bethesda, is buggy and their games are broken, they are still fun to play. So I do enjoy them. I am looking forward to the next one, Elder Scrolls 6. I am scared. I am scared that it's going to, disappoint me, because now we're at that point where their game engine is so outdated that I'm worried that it's going to be like a Fallout 76 situation. So I hope that doesn't happen. I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with Elder Scrolls 6. But I do love the series. I highly recommend it. And you guys should definitely check those out. But yeah, that basically kind of goes over RPGs. I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me kind of talk about ones that disappointed me, as well as ones that I really, really loved that were underrated that you guys should check out, as well as getting an idea of some of my favorites. Now, I didn't list all of my favorites or all of the ones that were disappointing or underrated, because this podcast is long enough today. That kind of gives you a glimpse into what I like and dislike. So it kind of gives you a better idea of what I like to play, how I like to play, and why I don't like certain games because of the way they play. So, hope you guys enjoyed yourselves. Thank you so very much. Make sure you go ahead and check out my social media. I have Twitter and Instagram. Just look up Cool Cat Terry. Go ahead and follow me on Twitch. I do a live streams there every evening, playing all kinds of good stuff. Good way to get in touch with me. I have a Discord. Thank you guys for supporting Just a Glimpse. We have it here on Anchor and Spotify. It's on Apple. It's all over the place. So thank you guys wherever you're listening in. I appreciate you guys. Hit that follow, share it with all your friends and family, and keep an eye on my Twitter, because I'll do more polls for what my next segments will be about, so you guys can come and listen in and have a say on what I discuss, whether we do more personal stuff or if we talk about a different topic, you know, like music or something like that. You know, I'll leave it up to a vote. So thank you guys again, and hope to hear from you all again real soon. Thanks for listening.